and rage, and the people imagine a vain thing. The kings of the earth set themselves, the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh and against his anointed, saying, let us break their shackles asunder and cast away their chain from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, Yahweh shall have them in derision. Then he will speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his soul pleasure.
Good morning, welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. At the end of the study, my player played back, it sounded so bizarre. I tried to record it. And then I played it back and I realized it sounds fine. I listened online and it sounded fine too. I realized no one experienced that glitching in the computer the way I did. And it was, I mean, it didn't sound good, it sounded awful. But it made me laugh, and I don't know if anyone wondered why I was smiling stupidly at the song at the end, because it didn't seem to match the subject. This that explains it. That was a technical glitch, which I thought it was like, bling, oh man, it was this hideous sound. You could barely hear the singing, and it sounded like, like a psalm from hell, perhaps. It just did not sound exact. It was not pleasing to the ear. I mean, even more so than my music usually is. Anyways, Psalm 98. A psalm. A psalm. Oh, sing unto the Lord a new song. For he hath done marvelous things. His right hand and his holy arm hath gotten him the victory. The Lord hath made known his salvation. His righteousness hath he openly showed in the sight of the heathen. He hath remembered his mercy and his truth toward the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen the salvation of our God. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all the earth. Make a loud noise and rejoice and sing praise. Sing unto the Lord with the harp and with the harp. Sing unto the Lord with the harp and the voice of the psalm, with trumpets and sound of cornet. Make a joyful noise before the Lord the King. Let the sea roar and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. Let the floods clap their hands. Let the hills be joyful together before the Lord, for he cometh to judge the earth. With righteousness shall he judge the world, and the people with equity. So, these are, you notice we have a series of victory psalms. The Lord reigns is the opening line of several of these. It's a vision of when God truly reigns, how good things are. And the extent to which things can be made good. And God does marvelous things. And it's we say it over and over. He's done marvelous things in my life, but it's, and I don't want to be a broken record. We could point out all the marvelous things he did of old. Like he led them through the sea. And Jesus, when he held, took Peter's hand, and even when he was sinking because of his lack of faith, he drew him up again. His holy arm, his right hand, to save. Because that is the operation of his arm. There is judgment and justice, but also salvation. And that's what we look to God for. Because he is our God, and because we serve him. That's all I really look to God for. I don't look to God for condemnation. I look to him for salvation. And, and because I trust in him, and therefore we ought to follow and do all the things he has asked us to, at least to the degree, at least to be attentive to those things. We ought, at least to know and acknowledge we ought to. So you gotta, I know, hey, I can read good. I know because I got a good grade on my SAT score when I took it. Right? If I try hard, if I apply myself, I can read good. Well, and that's true because you don't necessarily, being a good reader. Believe me, I've misread 1,000 things in my lifetime when I wasn't, or just oh yeah, whatever, and then misread it because sometimes being good does that to you. If you're good at something, you can become careless at it. Anyways, some people are good at talking or reading, and some people are good at faith and righteousness. And I'll tell you what, I think I admire more those that are good at faith and righteousness than those that are good at talking and reading. Though there is an important gift in that, right, to be able to communicate the truth. And of course I'm trying to sort of degrade the ministry a little bit, but just in the sense that, just not to despise, because I think she was like, oh, what can I do? What can I do? My life is so small and meaningless. There are marvels in everyone's life. Everyone has their own struggle. It's like I said, it's like, hey, a guy might read, but he has labors in righteousness that are struggles, or what, and it's, you don't necessarily know what other people go through. And we don't. I've learned that a million times. But I try to be conscious of what other people go through because, we need to be mindful of brethren and those that are weaker, be condescending to men of low degree because their struggles are real. Everyone's struggle is real. I was talking about that being wealthy. They're still miserable. Well, they shouldn't be. They got all the wealth in the world. Why should they be? Because they have all the wealth. Why should they be happy? Because, we see it over and over again. Why should we think that actually makes people who don't have money think, oh, if I had money, I'd be happy? Because a lot of their struggles in life might go away if they no longer had money, or if they had money. Sorry. But and it's and the reason I'm talking about that is because it's sort of a misapplication of what we look to God for. Like I said, I don't. The Lord knows my car needs to be kept up, and I try to do what I can. I also know it, and I'm like, okay, I need to change the oil. I got to do this. I got to do that. There's certain maintenance things that have to be done. Just like you can't just throw yourself off a temple and expect God to send angels to pick you up before you hit the ground. They may get you afterwards, but you're still going to abide by the world as it is established. And it's not moving. The world is established. It's not changing. Not, the world, this world as it is, no man can change it. Gravity is gravity. The sun is the sun. We can't alter the forces and the way things are. But it does not mean that God can't. But God, because He is the one who established it. That's always the one who is accepted. Him that established it. And so He that established all things also can save us from anything we worry about, little things, and in many small ways God has done many marvels in my life. I'm not gonna go on and on about details and stuff. I have to some degree. I'm here and there. Foremost with the Holy Spirit. When I received the Holy Spirit, to me, that was the most marvelous thing that God had ever done to me. And it increased my faith and also straightened it out a bit and made me also able to see correction better when people corrected me also. Yeah. Because before sometimes I would be, because I think because my doctrine was based on a kind of blindness, You know what I mean? It's like when you're blind and someone says, no, no, this is the truth. You're like, because you can't see. I have this. This is the truth. Again, when I talk about blindness, I hate, it's a metaphor. But please, blind people understand this, that people who see, blindness is like terrifying. For you who have lived with it or been born with it, obviously it's different. You live in a different sensory world, but it's a metaphor, you don't, because you can be, a blind person can see with the eyes of the spirit just as well as a person with visual, working eyesight can. Let's just put it that way. So we have cause to sing to God. He has shown us his salvation. He sent Christ. Of all the things, he raised up Christ, and therefore we know that we shall rise again. I always think there's your cause for rejoicing, always. Because that is our salvation, and that is our assurance. Not just our faith in it, but his doing it is God's promise, and his sincere, his own testimony of, here's what, and coming into the world, this is what I do. I lay my life down like this, so I'm here to save you. The resurrection being the part that really makes that clear. Of course, people have to believe in his resurrection. It is the most important thing we believe in as Christians. The resurrection of Christ. His right hand, his holy arm hath gotten him the victory. Let me have a sip here. I got a dry throat. The coffee is still very hot. He hath made known his salvation. His righteousness hath he openly showed in the sight of the heathen. This is, like it says, God hath put all things under his feet, yet it does not appear that all things are like under his feet. If the heathen, if the God, Christ is truly on the throne, why is there injustice in the world? Because, we're still, it's like, no. Ultimately, in God's kingdom, righteousness only will dwell. So there yet remains somewhat of God's kingdom that needs to appear, at the very least. Excuse me. Sorry, I should probably mute it for that. Anyways, in some ways, this is true. This is true of Christ in his incarnation. In that, him coming and being made flesh and being also rejected of the Jews, he by means of that, the gospel was preached to the Gentiles. And the righteousness, if we understand that to be Christ, he is the righteousness of God, the Lord our righteousness. He is our righteousness, literally, as Christians. We are the heathen that have seen and have, taken heed and feared. Now, and so it's true in a sense, in that the nations feared, and you think about Europe, those heathen nations, and people think they're not, white people want to be the white Hebrew Israelites. I used to be one of them. I realized I could do I used to be a white supremacist video if I wanted to, sort of. I never thought that way. But I remember being at the Shepherd's Chapel at the Passover and thinking it odd when I saw, I had odd thoughts, let's say. There were actually people of, there was a couple black people there. Which I was sort of like, huh. I'm like, the kings and the queens of the ethnos are showing up, right? But in a sense, that goes back to, it's like a segregated Christianity is like what the Shepherd's Chapel was. but though there was a weird sort of tolerance too, because it was never spelled out like that. You sort of expected segregation, but then when you saw him doing interracial marriages and stuff, you sort of were like, okay, well, I guess he doesn't. I remember I thought he'd question my marriage because I didn't know if I was white enough, and I know for some people I never will be, and so cheers. I really don't care, because I have settled on the fact that we are heathen, and those nations. Many of them were forcibly converted to Christianity. A lot of Europeans actually resent that. There's some people that want to go back to our animalistic religions. It's okay, yeah, sure. Something I guess whatever. That kind of. Sure, you go ahead to your animal religion. It doesn't seem to me to be the way to go. His holy arm hath gotten him the victory. He had made his salvation, his righteousness hath he openly showed in the sight of the heathen. I said that's aspirational. That's when, and this psalm is sort of about when that, in the event of God's salvation being revealed. And when it is revealed in small ways, you could say in the spirit, this occurs, because like the ocean roaring and all that, it is a metaphor. Or I'm sorry, well, the ocean roaring is more of a personification, actually, right? But these are poetic devices. It's a piece of poetry, just like his right hand and all that stuff. Again, this kind of stuff, his right hand, his holy arm, isn't literal, though God has a right hand and an arm. It's not talking about his actual physical hand, which he had when he walked the earth and all that, or the visible hand of God on his person, the Father or the Son. The Lord hath made in the sight of the heathen. Okay, he hath remembered his mercy and his truth toward the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen the salvation of our God. Because the promise and the mercy and truth to Israel, according to for the sake of his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he never made a full end of Israel. He always made a remnant return. He always showed mercy, and that was the mercy. That was the mercy. I don't know. The number one reason that God, bad things happened to Israel, and the primary reason was because they forgot God. But for the sake of those who did not, and also for the sake of his promise, he never made a full end of them. Even, look at Hitler wanted to exterminate them completely, and he failed, as he should have, as he all but certainly must have, because God's mercy towards Israel, I don't care how much you hate the Jews, God's mercy towards Israel will always be remembered. That's it. And I don't care, I don't know if it's a one-drop rule or whatever. I don't know how I let God sort out. I mean, because, people get into there's these other people that became, started calling themselves Jews. And to this day, there are people who are, intermarry. It's that Jews from different parts of the world look very different, because there are genetic Jews in Africa. I mean, they share genetic markers with other Jews that are common only to them, and not to most Africans, not to any Africans, as far as, except for these Africans, there's African looking as can be, just like there's European as looking can be Jews, and there's also very Middle Eastern looking, all kind. And I think that I remember hearing a report, and I forgot or did I, or is this a misremembering? I thought there was some, like, but it might have been from the 19th century. There's a lot of gobbledygook from the 19th century. The 19th century was a period of really a lot of, almost like a new dark age was beginning in a lot of ways, with the coming of, dark figures such as Marx and Darwin and such. I'm not a fan. His righteousness hath he openly showed in the sight of the heathen. He hath remembered his mercy and his truth toward the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen the salvation of our God. And in some ways, the world has all seen that. Their voice went out into all the world. Not every corner, every person necessarily, but I mean, the word, in one way or the other, the salvation of God, whether saving the Jews from Egypt or from all the troubles that beset them in the wilderness, from all the things that happened when they were conquering the land, all the time during the period of the judges and the kings, and up through Christ, and even to the present day. I mean, it's been seen. And the Bible's gone out, so we know that word has gone out. They've seen it, but they haven't really seen it, though. A lot of times people say, well, historically, none of that happened. I was watching a cool documentary on the altar in Mount Ebal. It was supposedly Joshua's altar, which I thought was really interesting. Because it was a kosher altar with a ramp and everything. No steps like a heathen altar. Then in the location where it said Joshua was doing sacrifices like that at the time before anything was established, where the tabernacle was. And so on. I usually have my coffee first, but today was an odd day. Okay. So, and as he was faithful to Israel, as grafted in through the Spirit in Jesus, through our faith in Christ, we are brought into that family and regarded as the same status, because we are with them heirs of the promise and are the faithful with faithful Abraham. And as God showed Peter in the book of Acts, Peter being the Gentile name given to that Jew, Simeon, and he showed him in the matter of Cornelius, who, when Peter had the dream and saw the sheet coming down with all the wild animals and four-footed beasts or creeping things, all manner of unclean and maybe clean, just all kinds of creatures, all kinds of things that you would never eat as a Jew because of the law. And the voice said, "Arise, kill and eat." I think he said kill. Arise, he just said, "Eat. Take these things and eat." And he said, "No, Lord, I've never had anything unclean." And he says, "What I have cleansed, don't you call unclean." And he does it 3 times. And Peter later explains he understands that what he understood to mean, that he shouldn't call any man common or unclean. You understand the reason there's not this obvious abhorrence for the Gentiles in the Old Testament. Like when you read the law, there isn't this like, don't touch a Gentile. That was something they developed, because they're constantly trying to adhere to the law and remain ceremonially clean. It led to a revulsion for the Gentiles because they weren't following the same things. And also they had reason to despise the Gentiles because they were ruled over by them and dominated by them. And so, I think that also helped them corrupt the law in that way. Because when you're being subject to the rules of heathen and they don't have the same thing as you do and you're trying to just, follow your righteous way, it's understandable that somewhat of an animosity would develop, as it did. But through Jesus, it says he has destroyed the enmity, which means that that there is a conflict and animosity. I mean, they're the chosen people. You know, right? That implies something sort of almost racist right off the bat, because he chose a family of people, which is sort of, it's not exactly a race, because there's a lot of people of Abraham's race that he didn't choose. He chose Abraham. Abraham wasn't like some sort of proto man or something. You know, he wasn't like some, oh, he's the first whatever. You know, the first green person, and now all the green people are the chosen people. I just chose that color because I wanted to, because I know there's people who are just so into that, and it just always drives me nuts. Like even when I was in the Shepherd's Chapel, I took what he was saying and I minimized it. Like, so in my mind, it was less racist than it was. When with some other people, it was more racist than it was. And I'm like, and because though I've admitted in the past, I will say, I was kind of raised a bit racist. I grew up a bit racist, and I think I still probably am a tiny bit racist. Ooh, but I don't believe in it. You know what I mean? I despise the idea of racism because of the gospel, because of what Jesus taught. There's neither male nor female, neither Jew nor Greek. I despise that. So I reject all such racist notions as a matter of philosophy and religion. That's not to say that I don't have racist instincts. Like, you know, I want all my children to marry people of the same race as me. Now, if they didn't, would I be upset? Probably. I would get used to it, because I assume that whoever they marry is going to be an excellent person, and I'm not going to have a problem with it. But I know I have this feeling with me. If I just examine it, I know it's there. But I know it's not let's say, I don't think it's an evil feeling per se. It's just because, like, I want my grandkids to look like me per se. But I'm going to have a bunch of grandkids, most likely, Lord willing, if you know. Or I have the possibility of having a bunch of grandkids. I should speak with gravity. You know, I don't know how many grandkids I'll have, or how many hairs I will have on my head, or how many breaths I have left to take. But what I'm saying is, I don't have to be like, oh, well, I have one that looks like, you know, it's all vanity in the end. It's all human, you know, my children, my this, my that, you know, looks like me, whatever. It's all vanity, and it should be discarded. I have no problem at all with that. But I know that in me, it's grown there. You know what I mean? And that's okay. You know, some people, they're so afraid of the idea that they can't even admit. That's the thing, is people are so reflexively, I'm not that way. It's like, well, sure you are. Or maybe you're not. Okay, you're better. But I'm only that way because of philosophy and belief, not because of instinct. You know, it's like, I didn't grow up in, and it's like, I don't know, you know, it's hard for me to look at someone my age and believe them. Like when they say stuff like that, when, you know, older people, I'm like, hey, didn't you grow up in the world I grew up in? You know, I mean, nowadays it's worse than it was. So anyways, but Christ is to have destroyed this enmity that existed between the Jew and the Gentile, them being the chosen people, we being the heathen, the goyim, the rejecting, the people God has not chosen. And that arbitrariness, I'll tell you what, it's terrifying. But it is, it's sort of a fact of things. That God does not owe men a thing. Not a thing. If we live and breathe on this earth, we are already renting. You know, we're here at God's expense. Because we certainly don't have anything to give in exchange for all this. Even the smallest bit of it. And so when he shows his mercy, which he to some, you know, as the parable of the workers' wages show, God is gracious. But his fairness looks like, what fairness means to God is you all die. All you people, all you humans, you all die. Now, later, it doesn't matter. You die. That's justice. That's the end. When you die, then things are back to normal. You weren't, and now you aren't. I believe in the second death. I believe in death in that sense. You know, some people, I think that taking that idea of torment literally is the cause of a lot of it just ruins it. You can't. I couldn't philosophically talk about God properly in terms of reality if I held on to that belief. And again, it's like why should death be just some spiritual thing, and torture, though, that's the most literal thing, but couldn't be the other way around. It's funny how people do that by sleight of hand, and it's funny, and that shows conditioning. We are conditioned to read the scriptures a certain way according to what we have been taught. That's tradition, and we have to. I like to be as a new wineskin. If I can renew my mind by God's Spirit and by my own being willing, then by all means renew my mind and allow me to see the Word in a new light, away from the darkness that I have allowed to cloud it, and give me a new vision. I want God, not new from the perspective of that God should say that there should be some strange thing I would say, but like, help me see this better. This is always my greatest desire. And I will step on my past self and I want to crush my past self into the past. I don't care if I got to correct him and change him and adjust. What do you expect me to change? I want to. Some people want to be the same. They want to lock themselves in. I wouldn't know that if I hadn't known people who were like that, who genuinely never wanted to change. You didn't think something could be made better? And this is someone I knew, someone who was younger than me than I am now when they told me this. Younger than I am now. And they thought, I'll never change. They were like, what do you expect me to change? You think I could change? And they never changed in anything, really. It's an interesting thing. And I guess that is very common. I seek change. I don't like this. This is not good. I want to move on. I want to put the past behind me and get the future here now. That's how I feel about it, because it's like I haven't become like Christ yet. So how the heck could I stop changing? You know what I mean? I haven't reached my goal. You have to have a goal. If your goal is to be subpar, whatever, I'm not going to describe what I think of that. But, my goal is not to be my 20-year-old self when I'm 50 or 60, 70, 80, or to be my 50-year-old self when I'm 70 or 80. All right. I want to see that salvation of God. I want to see it by living it. I want to see it not only with my eyes, like, oh, there it is. I want to be like, here it is. That's what allows you to make a joyful noise to God, to sing. And when God's salvation is made known, when everyone, all the ends of it, when they truly see it, the earth will rejoice. And how is that? Well, the people therein probably is what it refers to. The people that at some point it is now, hey, the indignation is past. When Christ comes, there'll be somewhat of a judgment. Like I've said, I think those that live will be spared. They'll be allowed to continue to live. God, he isn't going to be in the business of summarily executing everyone when he comes. There will be quite a bloodbath initially. Let's according to the scriptures, if we take that literally. It could be a spiritual bloodbath. That would be very kind, But who knows? I don't know. He could. That could be the Lord's mercy. It doesn't mean they're going to inherit eternal life. By the way, it just means they're spared immediate death. Because, like I said, Revelation, the book of Revelation, contains the revelation that the judgment of the righteous and the wicked is separated by 1,000 years. And even if that's metaphorical, it still means something. That means there's a vast amount of something between those two judgments, between those two resurrections. The first resurrection is to the judgment seat of Christ, where we receive a reward. It is not a judgment. We've passed from death to life. That's not the kind of judgment seat we're coming to. We approach the throne of grace with boldness, having assurance. Because, how do you get assurance? I did a study a while back on oraclesofgod.org. It was called Justifiable Confidence of Salvation. I think that's what I called it. It's funny, I could always check on my other screen before I bring it up here and make it a thing, because someone was asking me, well, how can I be sure that I'm saved? That's interesting. No, that's going to be sooner than that. It's number 21. It's an hour. It was like 5 years ago. Anyways, it's usually when we talk about salvation, we do so in terms of assurance. We believe our salvation is assured because God has promised it, and we want to regard this dynamic as an absolute. But can we justify our belief? And I can justify my belief because of the things He has done. Because also that He is, and by that I mean the things He's done in me, because I don't want to be like the things I've done, because it's not the things I've done, it's the things He has done in me, because I am His workmanship. And I know that because I am His workmanship. You can visually see it happening. Now, it's easy for me to say that because obviously I have a lot of work. But then remember, works are not always like a sign. Well, they're a sign of certain things. I mean, I can say that I have assurance of salvation, but it's not because of my works. But it gives me a feeling of assurance. That's why they say, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name? Lord, Lord, have we not, and in thy name have cast out devils? And in your name have done many wonderful works. And He says to them, I never knew you. So works, while they, like the thing is, I would say that, again, it's people sometimes cast that little scene as like, see, it's by faith alone, because they tried to get saved by their works. I don't think that's what they were doing, actually. I don't think they were trying. What it was is they had done things. It's like a lot of things, like Judas. I was there with you. I was casting out devils in your name. But somehow they're not faithful. That's the only thing that you can the only conclusion you can draw. With many of them, God was not well pleased because they were overthrown in the wilderness. In the course of time, some people's faith is overthrown. And and of course, in the end times, there's the apostasy. And that will be the cause of a lot of people coming to Him on that day. And He's going to reject them. And I suppose He says, depart from me, you that work iniquity, I never knew you. I almost wonder, because it doesn't, in that context, it doesn't even make it seem like, are they go to hell? What does that mean? I gotta change this other screen. There's a picture of my own stupid face looking at me, and I just, just the eyes, and I just don't want to see it. All right. What does that mean? Is that just all buzz off? You're done? Or if that's millennial, does it mean like sort of like they're looking around at can we get raised from the dead too? No, you worship, you take the mark of the beast. Forget it. No. Go away from me. And then I presume they live out their lives in the millennium until they die. And then they get judged at the white throne. Something like that. There's a little bit of that some of that nuance, it is, I'm not here to sell you a bill of doctrine, but like I've talked about the millennium, I have audio study also on the millennium, number 19, on oraclesofgod.org on this oraclesofgod.org on the studies page, which goes into those things, because like I said, I don't have I do have a point of view, but I'm not here to sell it to you, so I'm not going to go into that. Well, as I say those things, I want you to know I say it like that because I don't have the authority to say precisely what it is, because I don't know, and I'm not sure to what degree it's been revealed, but there are clues, but I'm not sure if is that really a clue of something millennial, or is it a clue, or am I just, sniffing at the wrong tree, And that very well may be the case. Okay, so sing, make a loud noise, rejoice, sing praise, sing to the Lord with the harp, the doubling there, with a harp, and with the voice of a psalm, and with trumpets and the sound of cornets, make a joyful noise before the Lord the King. Yes, musical instruments are forbidden. Oh, but we don't. That's the Old Testament. Okay, whatever. I don't. Sometimes, like I said, it's like, if it really makes you feel righteous to not have music in your worship, you might have lost sight of what's most important, honestly. You might have lost sight of that a long time ago, because, it's truly, they say, you strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. Whenever you see people straining at gnats, look for the camel. Figure out where's the camel they're swallowing. Because people who strain at gnats do swallow camels. Or strain out gnats, whatever. Whatever Jesus was getting at there. You hypocrites which strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. 23. Idea is that, these little things. Sorry. I don't think I need to do that again. It's a slight congestion. But it's an interesting thought. I know, whenever I see, but it's almost guaranteed. I haven't really examined religions that strain at gnats, and when I do, I should look for the camel. And it itself is a camel. The fact that you're wasting good time and good people's thoughts and stuff on giving them this false sense of righteousness and superiority of their worship, because they're the Christians that worship properly. I'm telling you, man, that's poison for your mind. That's a camel right in your throat. It's a smoke in God's nose too, believe me. You think, when you're sitting there with no musical instruments feeling superior, God thinks that stinks. And I'm pretty sure of that one. So says the scriptures. These are a smoke in my nose, a fire that burneth all the day. You think your music is holier than mine, isn't it? It's cleaner, isn't it? Because I use a guitar. You see this? I take this very personally. Because I like instrumental music. And it's okay, because the Lord, I'm a full gospel Christian. I believe in the Old Testament and the New Testament. You just have to. The Old Testament is a schoolmaster. You have to learn how to read it properly. You have to understand. It's not. Like I said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Not true. Not true. It wasn't true in Psalm 22. It wasn't true on the cross. That's the irony there. It's a beautiful thing for him to quote though and say. It was a true feeling though. That's the thing. It's like, he felt forsaken. You can bet on that. Because he was touched in every way with the feelings as we are touched and tempted. The feelings were there. The human feelings. Like when he said, not as I will, when he was talking about going to the cross, he just meant like, I'm sure the body, like when you're about to go into some really bad situation, the body's going to it's going to affect your body. And, I'm sure he was getting ready for that one. Because like I said, it's so hard to go into certain things fully knowing. It's like, it's like when you get your tooth pulled when you're a kid. They tie a string around, they put it on the doorknob, you look away, and they slam the door. And the idea is that if you don't anticipate it, it's not as bad. Just like with a shot. I remember my first shot, I just kind of looked away. And the funny thing is, my first shot, I was so brave, and it hurt like heck. And then I was laying on the couch for 2 days in pain with my shoulder just sore. I only discovered years later that doctors actually back then just didn't care. And they gave you shots in the most painful way. Because they should do it slow. Because obviously you're shooting this liquid into someone. And it's like, bam! It's like, yeah, it's going to hurt. All right. So everything. The sea. The floods. The earth. And so not just the hills. The hill people, but also the hills themselves. The sea and the floods. Clapping their hands. It's a personification. Didn't mean to hit the microphone. The hills are personified as though they had hands. Obviously they don't. But I don't know. Have you ever been, on a beautiful day, how the world almost seems to be rejoicing? With the birds singing and the trees in bloom and the flowers and all that. Everything's just kind of green and verdant, and the sky is, maybe a little bit cloudy, because sometimes that's nice. It'll give a little shade here and there. But a very blue sky with some partial, very light, fluffy clouds. The sparkling waters flowing along. It seems like everything's just right when you're in nature. The way the world seems to be okay. Because when does it not? Well, when the Assyrians come marching in with their machines of war and their siege engines of destruction, and when the bad stuff comes, when they come with their car, when they come to arrest people and take them away and drag them into their, when they're building prisons and extermination camps, the earth around them. And when they turn the world to that, the world becomes a dismal place, and there is no rejoicing because there's nothing right in the world. Of course, it is a subjective perception, of when his salvation comes, it's like the world is right. It's like when you're in love, when you're in love and the sky is a little brighter and the trees are a little greener and the birds sing a little more beautifully, right? And you have that when you're just in a good mood, you feel that. The world itself seems to rejoice for you. And when God comes, it will seem like the world is rejoicing. And the sea's roar will seem like applause. Before the Lord, for he comes to judge it. When God judges and he puts things right, then the earth can be normal and it will seem to be happy because there is not evil rampant brought about by men. Because the evil brought by men, there's evil brought by nature. And we understand this, and we can do such to avoid it, to some degree. In other degrees it takes us. Like I said, you die. That's what the Lord thinks, and that's what we all have to expect. Even believers will die unless they survive. We all believe this unless we only believe that we will not all die. But we will die if we are not among those who survive to the end when the Lord comes. And then we will be changed in the moment of the twinkling of an eye at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Yes. This is the first resurrection. Of course, jiving all that always threw me off because people were saying it had to happen ahead of the tribulation and all that, and that's nonsense. God's not taking his best troops out right before the war, all right? I sure as heck am not. If he better not take me up there. I'll be angry. I'm just kidding. Lord, I demand to go back down there. I want back in the fight, Lord. Like in some cheesy military movie. damn it, I gotta be in there, right? You know, it's like, no, I know he doesn't need me. Of course, God can of these stones raise up children, but he prepares us for that very purpose. Oh, he wouldn't want his bride. That's what makes his bride the best at the end, because of the things she does. And it's like, and he's got to come rescue her. You know, it's like the woman and the dragon. The woman will be delivered. All right, he will judge the world, judge the earth, the world. Notice, wasn't there? We did 2 words for world, right? Let's see. World is Tebel, and then earth is Eretz. Yeah, okay. You can't see the quick definition, but I did. Okay, and we talked about that before. We're not going to go over again. It's not significant. So what's equity here defined as? Now, we're not talking about Marxist equity. We're talking about actual equity, which is a lot closer to equality. Evenness. That's a good translation for it. In Hebrew, apparently, it means evenness, which makes me think of Marxist equity, where they want to make everything even. We're all miserable. Because that's what Marxism does. It makes everyone miserable. We're all equally miserable and have equally nothing. We all have, you know, and that's the thing, is like people don't, inequality is built into the world in many ways, but it is not a part of judgment. Inequality. I mean, judgment is with equity. It is even. Now, that is not to say that mercy does not supersede it. Mercy does. Mercy rejoices against judgment, as it says. Even if figuratively prosperity or comfort also straits. How is it translated in the King James? Agreements, a right, things that are equal, equity. Okay, that's good enough. Yeah. Anyways, I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to use the fact that the King James translated this as a reason to talk about Marxist equity, because I don't want to talk about it. It's such a, you know, the idea that we should make the results the same for everybody. People say, well, isn't that what happened in the parable of the workers' wages that you like to talk about, Paul? Didn't they all get the same thing? Didn't they all get paid the same? Yeah, but it wasn't fair, and that's the point. That's the point. It wasn't fair, in a sense. It was, but you have to understand in what sense it was unfair. Because there's a sense of unfairness that's injustice, where you're doing something that, like let's say someone comes to me and they're innocent, and I'm a judge and I'm like, well, I'm going to find you guilty anyways and throw you in jail because I don't like your face, right? That's injustice, right? You're not guilty. No, you say you didn't, you know, oh, you have all this proof that you didn't commit the rape. Well, we're going to jail you anyways, and you know, because we don't like you. You have bad breath, whatever. You know, just nothing. Injustice, right? That's injustice. Now, there's another kind of something that's not exactly fair. Let's say, I'm using that word fair a little bit in rubbery here, just to understand. Where we say, okay, you're guilty, but we're gonna let you go free for whatever reason. Now that, taken too far, obviously can lead to some evil, because like you let the wicked go free, you know, you shouldn't let the wicked go free. So mercy there's a hazard with it. There's a hazard of the wicked, that if they would receive mercy, they can go and do wickedly again, you know. But the Lord gives us mercy. And in that parable, that's what it's a reflection of. It's a reflection of, as he says in the parable of the workers' wages, which is basically, people work these intervals. Like some people start at the beginning of the day, and then throughout the day, there are people who start. The ones at the beginning agree to work for a certain amount, and all the rest, he says, I'll pay you whatever's fair or whatever's right. I forgot the term right now. And then as each of those people, and then up to there were people at the end who only worked 1 hour. And this was harvesting in a vineyard, right? Or a field, whatever. They'd only worked 1 hour. So there are people who worked all day and people who worked 1 hour. And then when they paid everybody, he paid everyone the exact same wage, which would look like what they call equity. But the people who worked all day, they grumbled. And they said, because they supposed they should receive more because he started paying the people who worked only an hour first, which is kind of almost cruel because it demonstrates and shows to the people who worked all day how much favor he's giving these people. These people who worked only 1 hour, they're getting a whole day's worth of wages. On one level, it seems equitable because, look at everyone's getting paid the same. But on another level, it's not equitable because some people worked a whole lot harder. But in the parable, the Lord in the parable, who is taking the role of God, who is in the place of God in the parable, he says, is it not lawful for me to do what I will with what is my own? Is your eye evil because I am good? He regards, I will give unto this last as I gave unto thee. Did you not agree with me? That was his first thing. Because remember, they agreed to work for that amount. So in that parable, from the beginning, we know that what they worked for was fair in their eyes. So in the end, when those who did not work the whole day, when they only worked an hour, and they received the same amount, there is more. That's a picture of mercy, because they receive more than they deserve. So there is a sort of a hazard in giving people more than they deserve, because you could make lazy people, and you can make more. If you let the wicked go free, they might go do it again. And with that hazard, the Lord takes it. But again, the wicked may do it again, but the Lord will not be mocked. If we do not heed Him, and again for us, we gotta understand that means we have to not be mocked. Means we can't say we have faith in Jesus and then not have faith in Jesus, and then we can't go back and forth. We have to become Christians. At some point we have to get serious. And once we've really gotten serious and He has demonstrated to us how serious He is, we've come to a certain point, like it says, to those who have tasted the heavenly gift, or whatever that means. There is a point where you begin to feel like, okay, yeah, if I turn my back on God now, how could I expect, if I turn my back on the faith and then Jesus came back and all this stuff happened, how could I go to Him and go, hey, I was thinking of coming back now that you're here. I know I rejected the faith and became an unbeliever and lived a hedonistic lifestyle, blah, 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 blah. Should He take me back? Once saved, always saved. No, God is not mocked. Once saved, always saved is true, but not saved, never saved. That's what I say. Once saved is always saved, and not saved, never saved. If you are not saved in the day of salvation, you were never saved. That's BS. You were never saved, because it's nonsense. You can't be saved and then be unsaved. There's no that does not connect. As far as in terms of God's salvation, you can be saved in terms of I was on a ship and we shipwrecked and then I was saved. You know what I mean? You can still go on another ship and die later, and that doesn't change the fact that you were saved once and the next time you weren't. But that's not how God's salvation works. He doesn't just pick you up off an island when you put your faith in Him. When you put your faith in Him, He promises to pick you up off the island later. You know what I mean? That's how salvation works. He doesn't come get you now when you put your faith in Him. though, because he's, it's like you gotta, it's like, when you pray to God and you take Jesus into your heart. I don't usually talk like this, but like, sure enough, when you receive Christ, when you put your faith in Him, and you speak to God and Lord Jesus, receive me into your kingdom. I don't even know what to say, but here goes. I just make it up. Doesn't matter. Because pour out your heart to Him. He understands. Well, tell Him what you need. Tell Him what you're looking for. When we do that, He hears us. And if it's like, and we're like on a desert island. We're done. We're gonna die here. We're going to die here. If we don't get rescued, we're going to die. This is where we will end our days. On this God-forsaken rock. It's kind of true. It's funny because it's in some ways, at a proper level of analysis, it's totally true. We're stuck on this planet. There's a whole universe out there that we could potentially run around in for all eternity. You know? So, or such things. I mean, it's like I said, there's also an infinite God. I might just get caught up in that whole thing for all infinity. I may not get around to looking at the silly universe. Maybe like, it's because when the greater thing appears and when it's, I don't know, it's like, what do you do when you run into the greatest thing ever? Because that's what God's going to be. It's going to be the greatest thing ever. You thought that video game was pretty cool. You thought this was pretty... Running into God is going to be the greatest thing ever. I think. Well, that's what I've come to expect. Because He is the greatest thing. But He's a righteous thing. A holy thing. A person, I should say. Well, the concept of God is righteous, holy. And He's a person. But that's the good part. Because then we can relate to God. Because He is not just some force of nature, some impersonal sense, built into the universe justice machine, He's not. And so His equity is about, so what is it about? Well, He renders every man according to his works. And by faith, and well, that's what Jesus says, to render every man according to his works shall be. We pass from judgment to life, and we've aligned our works with Christ. So we are going to be judged by our works too, but it's just a purely positive judgment that is sprouted from a salvation of which we have the assurance because of our relationship with God. More than I know my faith by my works, but also by, like I said, by God's works in me, and the things, because I know I did not do them of myself, but I do them through the assistance of His Spirit. Getting back to that. But anyways, He cometh to judge the earth. Equity. Do I want to say anything more about that equity? Well, I feel like I've left you hanging, like thinking, like, well, is the judgment of God equal or not? Well, mercy means that like I said, we all deserve death, right? And the only thing that prevents us from suffering the same fate is the sacrifice of Christ. So in a sense, like the price that we are due, like it doesn't mean like because I live and I've passed from death to life, doesn't mean that I have not been penalized with death for all I've done. It had to be paid. You know what I mean? For it to be equitable, I sort of have to suffer because like I said, I will go into God's kingdom being saved from sins that other people will go to damnation for sins no greater than the sins I've committed, And all the works I have that God values are in Christ anyway, so I have no claim to them of myself. He did the works. It's like all my music, I didn't even write my own words for years. And even now I know I consider it inspired. So the equity comes in the fact that Christ paid the price. Yes, you would receive exactly the same Your forgiveness is not just mercy. You're bought with a price. You know? That's why I say it is a serious thing to get into Christ. You are his servant. He owns you. That's what you get. You were going to die, and he bought you with a price, his own life, the life of his son. And that's supposed to buy some sort of service. Some sort of service. You know, we all serve God in our way. And like I said, in that service, let your mind serve him. Learn his ways. Do right. You know, like, and when I going back to Cornelius, what has recommended us to God anyways? Well, we fear him, and we try to do what's right. That's a good thing, because there's a lot of wrong in the world, and people who try to do right are not as numerous as it would be profitable to be. Okay, so we'll continue with Psalm 99, and we'll probably do, I think that one's really short. No, it's also 9 verses. This is 9 verses. We'll see how much of it we get. I didn't think we'd spend the whole time talking about this one, but I kind of like it. It's definitely gives me different angles to think about things. Anyways, thanks for joining me in this study. We'll be back again tomorrow, Lord willing. I expect fully so. So until then, let's see, we get some. That song was too long at the beginning.
He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. Yahweh shall have